Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
What's up, everybody? We finally arrived in LA, home city of Lucky Lady Casino, Hustler Casino, and so many others. I'm in love with this city, really. And today we're gonna go through my biggest win and also the biggest spot of my life. I assure you that this episode is gonna be insane and you're gonna love it. But before we go through the episode, I got a very special announcement to make. It is that my first ever meetup game already has a date and a place, and it's gonna be on February 18th at Lucky Lady Casino and on February 19th at Hustler Casino. The game will be a 2-3, but we can definitely play higher if you want it. I'll be there to have some fun with you. I'm from Brazil, so I don't know when is gonna be the next time we're gonna have an opportunity like that. So if you're from LA area or surroundings, consider showing up in the meetup game. There's another very special meetup game coming up, but now in Chicago, place where everything started, Windy City, on February 25 and 26. I'll forever be grateful for those guys, for everything they've done to me. They were always so friendly and welcome to me. Maybe if it wasn't for them, this vlog wouldn't exist. So I'll forever be grateful for those guys, and it's gonna be a true pleasure to me to be back there and to get to see all of the guys from Windy City. If you're from Chicago area, consider showing up there. This is the address, and now let's go to the episode. This session will be at Hustler Casino, place where I'm playing 80% of my sessions in LA, and place where definitely deserves applause from poker vloggers, because they really do a great job allowing us to record inside the casino and always treat me so well. I'm playing mostly 5-10 at Hustler, but sometimes I also play 2-5, and the session we're gonna start this episode is actually my first session at Hustler, and the reason why I'm putting out this session is because what will happen soon fits perfectly to what you will see over the biggest win of my life. There was no seat at the 5-5-10 yet, so I joined the 5-5 buying in for the max, which is 1,000. First hand in this table, I see pocket jacks on the big blind, under the gun straddles to 10, so that becomes a 5-5-10 table as well, and this happens a lot at Hustler. 4 players limp, and of course I'm gonna raise here. In those spots, I usually raise twice the size of the pots, and that's exactly what I do. I make it 105 to go.
Is that 105 real?
You know what you're talking about. I was with Brazil shirt, and sometimes I feel like this shirt makes people think that I'm afraid to lose money. Only button calls. I was already playing this table for a while, and button and small blind in these hands were my biggest targets. They were playing way more hands than they should and using sizings that didn't look great. We go heads up to a flop that comes queen 9-3 rainbow. Here I'm gonna c-bet to protect my equity. I know I'll be winning here most of the times. I c-bet $85, around 1/3 of the pot. Button calls. Turn is great, a 3 of diamonds. If I was winning in the flop, I'm still winning in the turn, most likely. But now, instead of betting, I rather checking and control the pot. Now button decides to bet. He bets really small, which seems like a value bet to me, but there's no chance I'm folding, especially for this sizing. So I decide to call and evaluate the river. River is a complete blank, a deuce of hearts. I check again, and now he bets $100. Easy call for me, and that's what I do. He shows pocket sevens, I show the jacks, and we win. Next hand I get ace-queen offsuit from middle position. The game is a 5-5 and I got one limper before me. I raise to 25, hijack 3 bets to 75. It folds back to me. Hijack seems to be a decent player, so versus decent players, I will tend to play optimally. And I know if I decide to play optimally this ace-queen offsuit, I should either 4-bet or fold this hand. And because I know that in live poker, people usually are impatient and are playing more hands than they should, I rather 4-betting ace-queen offsuit versus this player instead of folding, which both plays I could totally do that in a GTO perspective. So I 4-bet to $195, hijack folds, and we win the second hand. Our seat is ready on the 5-5-10. I had more than $1,500, so I had to come back to $1,500 to join this table. This is the structure of the 5-5-10, by the way. It is exactly the same rake as 5-5, but because the game is bigger, the rake becomes less relevant. You also get more rake back because you have free food, and this is the game I played the most over the last 2 weeks. My first relevant hand in this 5-5-10, I get pocket 8s in the hijack. It falls to me and I open raise to 35, button and small blind call. Flop comes queen 9-7 rainbow, small blind checks to me, I decide to check and we all check. Turn is a blank, a 3 of clubs. Small blind checks to me again, and I decide to check again. Button checks as well. In the river comes a very interesting card. A 8 of hearts, and now I have a set. And small blind decides to lead a pretty much pot-sized bet. I consider just calling, but I would be such a coward if I do that. There's definitely value into raising. The problem is that if I raise and this guy shoves all in, I'm gonna be in a really tough spot because I'm still losing for quite a few combinations of hands, such as 10 jack, 9s and some 6-5 suited. I don't see him having queens pretty much never here, so I decide to raise to 345, button folds, but then small blind does exactly what we didn't want him to do, which is re-raising.
Holy shit, man.
He had $1,500 in his stack and he re-raises to $1,200. I'm in a really tough spot. I gotta call $855 for a pot that has little less than $1,700. For my call to be profitable, I gotta be right more than 33% of the times. Which honestly at the time I had no idea if I would, because I had no information about that guy. That was my first big hand at the 5-5-10 and I was losing for 9s, for 10 jack and for 6-5. And then this is what I did.
Man, if you're bluffing, it's gonna be a great content. If you're beating me, it's gonna be a great content. I'm gonna fold this shit. I don't even know what I'm doing with my life.
I fold those pocket 8s showing my hand and then he shows king jack offsuit, guys. He was bluffing and my first session at Hustler, my first relevant hand actually, I just got owned by this guy. But that's actually a great hand to show you guys. Because of course I'm not happy with what happened. Actually at the time I felt kind of sad because I just realized that's a call. I'm not playing 1-2 or 1-3 here. I'm playing 5-5-10. So players will tend to have more bluffs in their range. So it would make sense to call with my set of 8s. Especially because my hand was very under rep. Because I checked flop, checked turn, and then only raised in the river because I hit my set. So okay, that was a clear call. That I made a mistake, and all I can do now is learning from my mistake. Actually, I can also help you guys learn from my mistake as well. If you're playing a 1-2 or 1-3, I honestly feel like it makes a lot of sense to fold. But the higher the game you play, usually the higher is gonna be the level of the players. And the higher the level of the players, the more balanced they will be. So in my first hand at 5-5-10, I already learned a very important lesson. But let's stop crying about it and let's go to the next hand. I buy in for 300 more. And next hand I see jack 10 suited in the small blind. Cutoff raises to 30. And here from the small blind, I will either 3-bet or fold. It will be rare the times that I'm gonna decide to flat from the small blind. I 3-bet to 120, exactly 4x of what he raised. Only cutoff calls, and we go heads up to a great flop for my range. Ace queen deuce rainbow with the ace of heart. Here we're playing really deep, and because this flop is better for my range, because here I could have aces, queens, ace queen, ace king, ace jack, I could have all the best hands, while cutoff couldn't, because otherwise he would probably 4-bet pre-flop. So now I'm gonna bet here, and in case he calls, I'm gonna keep betting. So I see bet 145, around 2/3 of the pot, and cutoff snap folds. Next hand I'm on the button with king queen suited, it folds to me and I open raise to 30, small blind and big blind call. Both of the players that I was targeting in this table. 3 players see a flop of king 8-6 with 1 spade. Great flop for me. This is a flop that I might be able to extract 3 streets of value, hopefully. They check to me and I see bet 55. Small blind quickly calls, big blind folds. We go heads up to the turn, which is a pretty bad one. An ace of diamonds. If he had an ace, he got there. Small blind checks to me and I decide to check back here. River is a blank, a deuce of spades. And now small blind bets 225. The way I played here, I showed weakness with the ace. I haven't gotten any showdown from this guy, so I don't know how often he could be bluffing. So even though I knew I would be losing pretty often, I still think it makes more sense to call instead of folding here. Especially when he raises a pot-sized bet, so he's saying that he has a great hand or nothing. So I call, and he shows ace-8, making 2 pairs in the turn and winning the hand. Next hand I'm in the small blind and I see ace queen offsuit. Under the gun +1 raises to 30. He's the same guy of the big bluffing hand. Button calls. And here, even though 90% of the times I'm gonna squeeze and 3-bet for something like 150 or 145, in this hand I decided to flat and disguise the strength of my hand. Big blind calls. 4 players see the flop, which is a really good one. Ace 10-5 rainbow. I check. Under the gun +1 see bets $80. Around 2/3 of the pot. I call, and everyone besides me just fold, so we go heads up to the turn, which is a blank, a 7 of spades. I check to him again, and now he bets 2/3 again. Here, I considered raising, but I don't think I'll be able to extract value from a worse hand than mine besides ace-jack maybe. And there are definitely many hands that I'm losing, such as ace-king, ace-10 suited, ace-5 suited, even ace-7 suited. So instead of raising, I rather just calling, and maybe he tries to bluff in the river. So I call, and the river is an ace, so this makes the chance of him having an ace to be way less likely. I consider leading here, but I still rather checking and allowing his bluffs to bluff. So I check. Now I see that he's separating many chips. I'm decided to call for any bet he does. He bets $500, I snap call, and he shows ace-5 suited. Honestly, I feel like we lost the minimum here. I know I could have lost way more than that, so I'm actually happy with how I play. It's weird that in situations like that I lose money but I should have lost more, I already feel happy right away. And yeah, here you go. Pretty big cooler against us, and we lose this one. I get a seat change exactly to the left of both of the players I was targeting. Unfortunately, few moments later, that guy decided to leave. Most likely that was a wise decision by him, but we're still gonna battle. We're playing 6-handed and I see ace-king offsuit from the big blind. Under the gun, open raises to 35. Small blind calls. I knew that I had a lot of edge versus the small blind, so instead of 3-betting big, I decided to 3-bet smaller than I would usually do, so they could call me more often. I make it 145, under the gun calls, small blind calls, and we go 3 ways to a beautiful flop. King 8-6 with 2 hearts. I have the ace of hearts. Small blind checks to me, and even though I usually gonna make at least half pot here, because I have the ace of hearts, I decided to make a 40% pot size c-bet. So I make 175 to go. Under the gun calls, small blind folds, and the turn comes a 10 of clubs. Now there are 2 flush draws in the board, and I have top pair, top kicker. I feel like that's a great spot to shove all in. I got a perfect stack to do that, and a perfect hand. So I just wait for around 10 seconds, and announce I am all in. All in. Under the gun thinks for more than a minute, and in the end decides to call.
1 time or 2 times?
That's twice. Twice.
We decide to run it twice, and let's go. First river is pretty bad, cause flushes and straights get there. Second river is safe. He shows jack 9 of hearts. In this situation, I was a 68% favorite, so that was a great spot to put my money in. If we won this hand, we would be back to even after a roof day, but it seems like it's not meant to be. We chopped, and it happens. Right after this hand, the table broke. This type of situation is happening a lot lately. I play until the table ends up breaking. But now let's go to the best part of this episode. I come back to Hustler for another day of 5-5-10 no limit hold'em. It's 11:30 PM of a Friday. Great time to play poker. And I join a 5-5-10 table that doesn't seem to be so fishy, but that was only a guess at the time. I buy in for 1500, which is the max, and the first hand in this table, I'm in the small blind with jack 10 suited, button raises to 45. I'm not in love with this situation, cause that was the first hand that button open raised, and he decided to make a big sizing. There were no limpers, and he made 4.5x raise. I've seen that as a little bit of a strength, so I could consider just calling with the jack 10 suited, even though most of the times I'm gonna either 3-bet or fold this hand. But I decided to follow my usual plan, which is 3-betting. I 3-bet little more than 4x to $195. Only button calls and we go heads up to a flop that comes 10-8 deuce with 2 clubs and no diamond. Here I could either go with betting or checking. In this particular situation, I decided to check, which is something I would do with hands like ace-king, ace-queen, even ace-jack where I didn't have any flush draw or redraw. But in this case I have top pair. He checks back and the turn comes a 7 of clubs. Now flush gets there, but I really don't see him having a flush so often. So now, because I don't think he has the flush and I want to protect my equity, in case he has a club, or an ace and a king, or a queen, I decided to bet half pot, $210. He double checks his hands, which unless that he's trying to give me a fake tell, that makes it be even less likely for him to have a flush. He decides to raise for $575. This is a pretty tough spot. By the way he's playing, I'm losing only 2 flushes here. I don't think he would do something like that with jacks, queens, kings and aces. Even though this is a tough spot, I believe this is a pretty clear call. So I decided to call and analyze the river. River is an 8 of hearts. It doesn't change much. I check to him, he decides to check back, I show my hand, and it's good. Later on, he told me he had ace-king, so thank God he didn't 4-bet pre-flop. Next hand, I get ace-10 offsuit from the small blind. A similar situation happens where button raises 45 without no limper before him. So he's raising pretty big here. And with this hand, I would either 3-bet or fold. And because we're playing so deep, and I'm not playing for the nuts here, I believe this is a great opportunity for me to have patience and just let that hand go. I would rather way more 3-betting with a hand like ace-3 suited that I'm going for the nuts, other than a hand like that, ace-10 offsuit, which I don't have so much robust equity on future streets. So I decided to fold here, and I'm only showing this hand for you guys because I really feel like many people would tend to call or 3-bet with this hand. And I don't think it's a good option to 3-bet with this hand versus an opponent that you feel like he is strong, especially when you're playing out of position. So I fold and we go to the next hand, which is definitely one of the most interesting hands of this episode. I see 10-9 suited from the cutoff, one limper before me, which is always great. I open raise to 45 in position. Small blind decides to 3-bet me to 165. Everybody folds to me, and here, because he 3-betted really small, and we're playing so deep, this makes this situation be an easy call for me. I'm calling 120 for a pot that has 235 and we're playing really deep with a hand that can get a great flop. So I call and we get kind of the flop we wanted. 8-8-7 with 1 diamond. Effective stack is mine of 2200, and now he bets really small for $65. I feel like that's the clearest call of this episode. I'm getting a great price here. Honestly, if he has aces or kings, that's gonna be great. Because if I hit my straight, I'm gonna be able to extract a lot of value from him. So I just wait around 10 seconds and call. The turn is one of the best cards in the deck. A 6 of diamonds. He decides to bet again, but bigger this time. He makes it $360, around 2/3 of the pot. And again, I wait for something like 20 seconds and call. The river is a diamond. Now I got a flush. I confess I would rather this river not to be a diamond, but I still have one of the best possible hands. And now he thinks for like 20 seconds and announces all in. I snap call. He says I'm good. I show my hand. He mucks and we win this $4,500 pot. And at this moment, this was the biggest pot of my life. But if you think this episode is over, you're far away from being right. Because even though this spot was one of the biggest pot of my life at that moment, this is not the biggest spot of my life anymore. Because I had around $4,500 in my stack, and we were playing Omaha bomb pots every dealer change. And in this bomb pot, I was the button. The flop came 10-10 deuce rainbow and 7-8 ace with 2 spades. And I cry my cards and see that I have 2 face cards and 2 9s or 10 cards. So hopefully I have a 10 in my hand, and I have even better than that. I have trips in the upper board and a huge wrap in the lower board with 9-10 jack in a 7-8 board. So I'm playing for the nuts on both boards, and most likely I have one of the best hands in this table. Cut off bet spot for 200. Easy call for me, and that's what I do. And now early position, which is that gentleman in the other side of the table, makes it pot again for $1,000. And now I don't feel I have the best hand in this table anymore. But I'm still gonna call in position, again because I'm going for the nuts on both boards. But to make this situation even more weird, Cutoff decides to go all in for $1,680. So here, even though I'm not in love with this spot, I believe that's a pretty clear call again, because when early position makes a pot-sized bet of $1,000 over a $200 bet, his raise is of $800. But when Cutoff goes all in for $1,680 over a $800 raise, which is the difference between 200 and 1,000, 680 is less than the $800 raise that he made, so that doesn't open up the action. So if I decide to call the 1680, early position will not be able to re-raise me again. And I'm in position here, playing for the nuts on both boards with 4,500 in my stack, and I can totally call 1480 to try to hit a 9, a jack, a 10, or a king in the upper board, or try to hit a 6, a 9, a 10, or a jack that is not a spade in the lower board. So I got plenty of outs on both boards to go for the nuts, and I still have implied odds of hitting my cards and extracting a lot of value from that guy. So here, again, even though I'm not in love with this spot, this is a clear call and that's what I do, I call. Early position asks if he can raise. I kept my mouth shut and thankfully the dealer said he can't. He calls the 680 more, $5,400 in the pot already. I'm praying for the turn to give me the nuts on any one of those boards, and that's exactly what he does. I have the nuts on the upper board, and I have a shitty hand on the lower board, but having the nuts on one of the boards is already great in a situation like that. Early position puts me all in. I double check if I'm not thinking through nothing wrong, and I call. Early position already realized that he's kind of in a bad shape. He asks if I have the nuts, and I say only in one board. I show my hand. The dealer hits the cards right away. I still have the nuts on the upper board. And now early position starts to try to find a way to win one of the boards. He shows he had a set of deuces in the upper board. He doesn't show nothing in the lower board. And I end up winning 80% of the biggest spot of my life to date for $11,000. Cutoff ends up chopping with me for the smallest spot, and I end up winning the biggest one. And here you go. Now you guys have the biggest spot of my life to date so far. Few minutes later, the table broke, and I end up booking a win of more than $6,000 in less than 4 hours of game. And this is gonna be the end of this episode. Make sure to come in the meetup games, either in LA or Chicago. If you enjoyed this episode, there are 70 others that you will also enjoy as well. Just click any one of those options in the screen. The mission of this channel is helping you become a better poker player, and I see you next time.